In 1918, an invisible enemy began to spread across the globe. It would claim millions of lives, silence bustling cities, and leave an indelible scar on history. But how did the world survive one of the deadliest pandemics in history? What were the struggles, the stories, and the moments of triumph in the face of unimaginable loss? Today, we're diving into the tragic yet resilient story of the 1918 influenza pandemic, better known as the Spanish flu. This pandemic changed the course of history, and its lessons still echo through our world today. Stay with us, because this story is one you won't forget. By the summer of 1918, the world was already reeling from the horrors of World War I. The war consumed nations, shaping every aspect of life. Yet amidst the bloodshed and suffering of soldiers on the front lines, another invisible threat was quietly spreading across the globe: the Spanish flu. This pandemic was unlike any other before it. It didn't care who you were, whether a soldier, civilian, or government official. Its reach was global, and it moved fast. But the world wasn't prepared for a virus this powerful, and it began to spread in relative silence. Though we refer to it as the Spanish flu, its origin remains unclear. Some speculate it emerged from the trenches of war-torn Europe, while others believe it originated in the United States. What we do know is that by the time it hit Spain, the virus had already spread rapidly through Europe and the United States. As the virus spread, it hit major urban areas where overcrowding and unsanitary conditions worsened its effects. But, unlike the global attention Spain received, most countries didn't initially report the scale of the flu. It was as though the world was too focused on the war to notice the pandemic that was already ravaging entire communities. Europe was the epicenter of the first major outbreak, but the flu's spread was swift. The virus made its way to major port cities across the globe, infecting soldiers, civilians, and eventually entire populations. The U.S. was next. As soldiers returned home from war, the virus followed them, exploding across American cities like New York, Chicago, and San Francisco. In the United States, New York became one of the first cities to see widespread infection. By mid-1918, the virus was wreaking havoc in almost every state, from the industrial cities of the North to the rural towns of the South. What began as a localized outbreak quickly escalated into a full-scale global epidemic. Major cities like New York were overwhelmed. Hospitals and makeshift clinics were overcrowded with patients who were rapidly succumbing to the flu. The most chilling part? The world still didn't understand how to control it. By the time the medical community understood what they were dealing with, the flu had spread so far and wide that the usual quarantine measures seemed almost futile. The death toll kept rising, and there was little that could be done to stop it. The impact on society was devastating. Life in major cities, where people once bustled through the streets, was now at a standstill. Businesses closed their doors, schools shuttered, and public events were canceled indefinitely. It felt like time had stopped, and for millions, life would never be the same. People watched helplessly as their loved ones fell ill. Entire families were struck by the virus. Hospitals became overwhelmed and could not provide the care that the sick desperately needed. There was no escape from the pandemic, and fear spread faster than the flu itself. In city after city, the medical facilities were filled to capacity, and people struggled to find any help. Public health announcements urged citizens to stay indoors, to avoid crowds, and to wear makeshift masks. But even these measures, which we take for granted today, were little more than a stopgap. The disease was too fast, and its toll was too heavy. In this time of global tragedy, every corner of the earth felt the weight of fear, loss, and confusion. Nations at war were now also fighting a war against a virus they couldn't see, let alone defeat. In 1918, the science of virology was in its infancy. Doctors and scientists knew that a virus was behind the illness, but they didn't fully understand how viruses worked. There was no vaccine, no antibiotics, and certainly no antiviral treatments available. The medical community was caught off guard. Physicians did their best to treat symptoms with the limited tools available, administering fluids, using aspirin, and relying on bed rest. But these treatments were, at best, ineffective. People who were already weak from other illnesses were the first to succumb, while others struggled for days before finally succumbing to pneumonia or secondary infections. While doctors and nurses worked tirelessly around the clock, the public was in a state of confusion. Some treatments, like aspirin, were prescribed in dangerous doses, only adding to the suffering of patients. Efforts to stop the flu through quarantine zones and mask mandates were implemented, but there was still no coordinated global response to the pandemic. Governments were slow to react, unsure of how to approach this new and rapidly evolving threat. But amid the chaos, there were survivors, brave men and women who faced the unimaginable and lived to tell their stories. These survivors became symbols of resilience and hope in a world where hope seemed all but lost. One such survivor was a nurse named Eleanor, who worked relentlessly in New York City. She cared for hundreds of patients who were stricken by the flu. Unfortunately, Eleanor contracted the virus herself, but against all odds, she survived. Her story became one of courage and hope, inspiring many in the city to keep fighting, to keep going, even when everything seemed lost. Healthcare workers during the Spanish flu became the unsung heroes of the pandemic. They risked their lives day after day to save others, even when they knew the risk was so great. These brave individuals were the glue that held together communities during one of the darkest times in history. Beyond the hospitals, communities worked together to help each other. People shared food, helped care for the sick, and comforted the grieving. Despite the overwhelming loss, these acts of kindness proved that the human spirit was not so easily broken. When the pandemic finally began to subside, the world was left to pick up the pieces. Over 50 million people had perished, and cities were left in ruins. But from the ashes of this tragedy, something profound began to take shape. Governments and health organizations around the world realized the importance of public health infrastructure. The Spanish flu was the catalyst for massive change in how the world approached medicine and disease prevention. It prompted the creation of national health organizations and led to new medical research that would pave the way for future vaccines. The Spanish flu, despite its tragic loss of life, taught the world the importance of preparedness, hygiene, and the global coordination needed to fight pandemics. These lessons would eventually lead to the creation of the World Health Organization and the global health systems we rely on today. As we reflect on the 1918 influenza pandemic, we realize that it wasn't just a story of tragedy. It was also a story of survival and the human spirit's ability to endure. The lessons learned from that time are still with us today, especially as we face modern global health crises. Though the Spanish flu claimed millions, it also reshaped the world's approach to public health. The courage and determination shown by survivors and healthcare workers have become part of the collective memory of humanity. So, what can we learn from this pandemic? How can we, in the face of future challenges, rise above adversity? The choice is ours. Like those who survived the Spanish flu, we too can shape the future with our actions, our resilience, and our unwavering belief in the power of unity. If this story has moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share your thoughts below and let us know how you believe the lessons of the past continue to shape our world. Stay tuned for more gripping tales from history.